18 from the Chargé d'Affaires AI of the Permanent Mission of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland to the United Nations, addressed to the President of the Security Council S/2018/218. The agenda is adopted. The Security Council will now begin its consideration of item 2 of the agenda. I wish to draw the attention of Council members to document S 2018-218, a letter dated 13th of March 2018 from the Chargé d'Affaires. I now give the floor to those Council members who wish to make statements. I give the floor to a representative of the United Kingdom.
Thank you, Mr. President. And thank you for arranging this urgent meeting of the Security Council today to give the United Kingdom the opportunity to update Council colleagues on our investigation into a nerve agent attack in Salisbury. On Sunday, the 4th of March, Sergei Skripal and his daughter Yulia were found in the town centre slipping out of consciousness on a public bench and were taken to hospital by our emergency services, where they remain in a very serious condition. Investigations by world-leading experts at the Defence Science and Technology Laboratory at Porton Down, accredited by the Organisation for Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, OPCW, discovered that they had been exposed to a nerve agent. British police officer Nick Bailey was also exposed and remains in hospital in a serious condition. Hundreds of British citizens have been potentially exposed to this nerve agent in what was an indiscriminate and reckless act against the United Kingdom. We have deployed our military to secure and decontaminate numerous sites. The police continue an exhaustive, wide-scale investigation. Through those investigations, we have concluded that Mr. Skripal and his daughter were poisoned with a Novichok, a military-grade nerve agent of a type developed by Russia. It is not a weapon which can be manufactured by non-state actors. It is so dangerous that it requires the highest grade state laboratories and expertise. Based on the knowledge that Russia has previously produced this agent, and combined with Russia's record of conducting state-sponsored assassinations, including against former intelligence officers whom they regard as legitimate targets, the UK government concluded that it was highly likely that Russia was responsible for this reckless act. We saw only two plausible explanations. Either this was a direct attack by Russia on my country, or Russia had lost control of a military-grade nerve agent which they had developed. We requested the Russian government to provide an explanation by the end of Tuesday the 13th of March on how this Russian-produced nerve agent could have been deployed in Salisbury. They provided no credible explanation which could suggest they lost control of their nerve agent. Mr. President, we therefore have no alternative but to conclude that the Russian state was responsible for the attempted murder of Mr. Skripal and his daughter and police officer Nick Bailey, and for threatening the lives of other British citizens in Salisbury. Mr. President, this was no common crime. It was an unlawful use of force, a violation of Article 2 of the United Nations Charter, the basis of the international legal order. Mr. President, the UK is proud to have been one of the states which played an integral role in drafting the Chemical Weapons Convention, a landmark piece of international law. We are therefore dismayed that Russia has suggested that our response fails to meet the requirements of the Convention. Article 7 of the Convention calls on state parties to implement the Convention under their own legislation. The United Kingdom has enacted the Chemical Weapons Act in order to fully comply with this obligation. That legislation, together with relevant criminal law, is now guiding our investigation into this incident, as the Convention was designed. This was an attack on UK soil. Under the Convention, we have the right to lead our response, engaging the OPCW and others as appropriate. On the 8th of March, the UK formally notified the OPCW Technical Secretariat that a chemical attack had taken place on UK soil. The Russian Federation has complained that we are not using Article 9 of the Convention. On the contrary, on the 12th of March, once it became clear to us that the United Kingdom had been attacked, my Foreign Secretary summoned the Russian ambassador and sought an explanation from his government. As Article 9 is clear, we have the right to do. We have received no meaningful response. It is therefore Russia which is failing to comply with the provisions of the Convention, and this Council should not fall for their attempt to muddy the waters. In addition, the United Kingdom has welcomed the offer of technical assistance from the Director General of the OPCW, and we have invited the Technical Secretariat to independently verify our analysis. We are making every effort to expedite this process. Mr. President, let us now turn to the part of the Chemical Weapons Convention which Russia is not talking about, the part which requires state parties to declare chemical weapons stockpiles and facilities which have been used at any time since 1946 to produce chemical weapons. Chemical weapons were to be verifiably destroyed and production facilities destroyed or converted subject to approval within 10 years of entry into force of the Convention. Russia completed destruction of its declared stockpile in September 2017, 10 years later than required by the Convention and 5 years beyond the single 5-year extension period. Russia did not declare Novichok agents or production facilities associated with them as it was required to do under the Convention. No development facilities were declared. Yet we know from testimony by the Russian scientist Vil Mirzanyov that Novichoks were developed as part of the Soviet Union's offensive chemical warfare program and inherited by the Russian Federation. Such facilities associated with that program should have been declared under the CWC. Even today, a Russian politician has said that Russia has destroyed the Novichok nerve gas. Mr. President, from all of this, we can conclude that Russia is in serious breach of the Chemical Weapons Convention through its failure to declare the Novichok program. This fact alone means you should discount any arguments you hear about the possibility of other countries having inherited this technology. Had Russia declared and destroyed their own program, there might have been some truth to this. Mr. President, on the 4th of March, a weapon so horrific that it is banned from use in war was used in a peaceful city in my country. This was a reckless act, carried out by people who disregard the sanctity of human life, who are indifferent to whether innocents are caught up in their attacks. They either did not care that the weapon used would be traced back to them, or mistakenly believed that they could cover their traces. Russian officials and media channels have repeatedly threatened those they consider traitors, even after the 4 March attack. Russia has a history of state-sponsored assassinations, including that of Alexander Litvinenko, poisoned by radioactive materials in my country a decade ago. Russia has a history of interfering in other countries, whether the botched coup in Montenegro, repeated cyber attacks on other states, or seeking to influence others' democratic processes. Russia has a history of flouting international law, most egregiously in Crimea, eastern Ukraine, and Georgia. Russia shows disregard for civilian life. We all remember Flight MH17, shot down by Russian proxies supplied with Russian weapons. And Russia has shown, in its repeated protection of Assad's chemical weapons use, that it has different standards when it comes to the use of these terrible substances. We have not jumped to conclusions. We have carried out a thorough, careful investigation which continues. We are asking the OPCW to independently verify the nerve agent used. We have offered Russia the chance to explain, but Russia has refused. We have therefore concluded that the Russian state was involved, and we have taken certain measures in response. In taking these measures, we have been clear that we have no disagreement with the people of Russia, who have been responsible for so many great achievements throughout history, It is the reckless acts of their government that we oppose. Mr. President, we are grateful for the support of so many countries around the world. We will come back to this Council as the investigations make more progress and continue to keep you informed. We have already heard the attacks and threats that Russia has made over the past few days. We know that there will be more to come. This is how Russia has acted in every other case where it has been caught flouting international law: denial, distraction, and threats. It is what Russia does. But we will not let such threats deter us. We will not weaken our resolve. We will stand firm, confident in our democracy, our rule of law, and the freedom of our people. We will stand by the values which are shared by the overwhelming majority of those in this Council, in this United Nations. And we ask you today to stand by us. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of the United Kingdom for his statement. I now give the floor to the representative of the United States.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I thank my British colleagues for calling this important meeting. We're here today to discuss the use of a chemical weapon by one council member in the territory of another council member. Let me make one thing clear from the very beginning. The United States stands in absolute solidarity with Great Britain. The United States believes that Russia is responsible for the attack on 2 people in the United Kingdom using a military-grade nerve agent. Dozens of civilians and first responders were also exposed. Police officer Nick Bailey was the first to arrive on the scene and remains hospitalized in serious condition. Our thoughts and prayers go out to the victims of this atrocious crime. No 2 nations enjoy a stronger bond than that of the United States and the United Kingdom. Ours is truly a special relationship. When our friends in Great Britain face a challenge, the United States will always be there for them. Always. Alone, Russia's crime is worthy of this Council's action. But this is not an isolated incident. The assassination attempt in Salisbury is part of an alarming increase in the use of chemical weapons. Last year, the North Korean regime used the nerve agent VX to publicly assassinate Kim Jong-un's brother in a Malaysian airport. In Syria, the Assad regime continues to kill its own people with chemical weapons years after this Council passed Resolution 2118 to remove the threat from Syria's chemical weapons program. When the Security Council created a mechanism to investigate chemical weapons attacks, that mechanism was targeted when it began to shine a spotlight on Assad's role in killing his own people. A growing concern in all of this dangerous and destabilizing activity is Russia. Russia failed to ensure Syria destroyed its chemical weapons program. Russia killed the Joint Investigative Mechanism when it found Assad liable for chemical attacks. Russia used its veto to shield Assad 5 times last year. It has also provided cover for Syria in The Hague at the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons. The Russians complained recently that we criticize them too much. If the Russian government stopped using chemical weapons to assassinate its enemies, and if the Russian government stopped helping its Syrian ally to use chemical weapons to kill Syrian children, and if Russia cooperated with the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons by turning over all information related to this nerve agent, we would stop talking about them. We take no pleasure in having to constantly criticize Russia, but we need Russia to stop giving us so many reasons to do so. Russia must fully cooperate with the UK's investigation and come clean about its own chemical weapons program. Russia is a permanent member of the Security Council. It is entrusted in the United Nations Charter with upholding international peace and security. It must account for its actions. If we don't take immediate concrete measures to address this now, Salisbury will not be the last place we see chemical weapons used. They could be used here in New York or in cities or of any country that sits on this council. This is a defining moment. Time and time again, member states say they oppose the use of chemical weapons under any circumstance. Now one member stands accused of using chemical weapons on the sovereign soil of another member. The credibility of this council will not survive if we fail to hold Russia accountable. Thank you.
I thank the representative of the United States for her statement. I now give the floor to the representative of France.
Monsieur le Président,
Mr. President,
je remercie le Royaume-Uni
I would like
d'avoir
to
pris l'initiative
thank
de
the
cette réunion
United
importante,
Kingdom for having taken the
comme
initiative to call
je le
for this
remercie
important
pour les
meeting.
éléments
And I
d'information
thank you for the
fournis sur la situation
information that you've
suite
provided
à la
with
tentative
regard
d'assassinat
to
de
the
deux
information you
ressortissants
have
russes
following
sur
the
son sol
attempted
le 4
assassination
mars
of two
à
Russian
Salisbury.
citizens on the 4th of March in your country, in
Permettez-moi
Salisbury.
de renouveler
Allow
d'emblée
me at the
à
outset
notre ami et allié
to
britannique
our friend and ally, the
tout le
United
soutien
Kingdom,
exprimé hier et
to
aujourd'hui par les
renew
plus
all the
hautes autorités
support today
françaises
that was expressed yesterday
après
by
une
the
attaque
highest
inacceptable
French
que
authorities
le
following
président
an
Macron a
unacceptable
condamné
attack
sans
which
réserve.
President Macron
Au nom
condemned
des valeurs
unreservedly.
cardinales que nous partageons,
In the name of the
au premier
cardinal
rang desquelles
values
l'État
which
de
we
droit,
all share, the
au
first
nom de
amongst them, the
l'attachement
rule of law,
au fondement de la paix et de la
attachment to the
sécurité
principles
dont
of
ce
peace
Conseil est le
and
gardien
security
et le
for
garant,
which this council is
je
the
voudrais ici
guardian and the guarantor.
exprimer au Royaume-Uni
I would like to
le
express
plein
to the
soutien et
United
la
Kingdom
totale
the full
solidarité
support
de la
and
France.
complete
Cette
solidarity
position
of
ne
France.
souffre d'aucune ambiguïté.
There can be no ambiguity with regard to our position on this.
Monsieur le Président, soyons clairs.
Mr. President, let's be clear
Cette
about
tentative
this.
d'assassinat dans
This
un lieu
attempted
public
assassination in a
par le
public
recours à un agent
area
neurotoxique de qualité
using a
militaire,
toxic
tel
nerve
qu'il nous l'a
agent
été
of military
rapporté,
grade, as we have
et
heard in
qui a
the report,
exposé la population
and which
civile sur le
exposed
territoire
civilian
britannique,
the population
est totalement
to
inacceptable.
unacceptable
La
risks.
Première ministre, Madame
The
Theresa
Prime
May,
Minister, Theresa
est
May,
intervenue aujourd'hui devant la Chambre des
spoke today
communes
before the House of
et a établi
Commons
la responsabilité de la
and
Russie
stated
dans cette attaque.
that Russia is
Nous faisons
responsible for
pleinement
this attack.
confiance à l'enquête britannique
We have full
pour faire
confidence in the
rapidement toute
British
la lumière
investigation
sur les
to
circonstances
quickly
précises
shed light on
de
the
cette
precise
utilisation d'une arme
circumstances
chimique.
for this use of a chemical weapon.
Il est impératif que ceux qui sont à l'origine
It
de
is
cette
essential
utilisation
that
d'une
those
arme
that
chimique
are at the origin of the
clairement
use of this chemical
identifiés
weapon be
et
clearly
poursuivis,
identified and
et que toutes
prosecuted,
les réponses adéquates
and that all
soient
appropriate
apportées au
responses
plus vite
be
aux
provided as
questions
soon as
légitimement
possible
soulevées
to
par
the
le
questions
Royaume-Uni
that have
dans le cadre de cette
legitimately
enquête.
been raised by the United Kingdom in
Ne
this
nous y
inquiry.
trompons pas, les faits et les enjeux
Let us be clear about
sont d'une
this. The
extrême
facts and what
gravité.
is at stake are extremely
L'interdiction
serious.
d'emploi des armes
The
chimiques se trouve au
prohibition
cœur du régime
of
de
the use of chemical
non-prolifération
weapons is at the very
qui
heart
fonde
of the
notre système
non-proliferation
de sécurité
regime,
collective
which is
tel
the
que créé
foundation for our
et encadré
system
par ce
of collective
Conseil
security,
et tous ses
created
membres.
and enshrined by this Council and all of its
La
members.
réémergence tous azimuts
The
de ces
haphazard
armes barbares
re-emergence
aux
of these
conséquences
barbaric
meurtrières,
weapons with
dont
such
témoigne
deadly
leur emploi
effects,
récurrent
which can be
en
seen
Syrie
by
et
their
au Moyen-Orient,
recurrent use
mais
in
aussi
Syria
en Asie
and in the Middle East, but
désormais
also
en Europe,
in Asia and now in
ne
Europe,
peut pas être tolérée.
cannot be tolerated.
Elle bafoue les principes qui fondent la
This
paix et la
flouts
sécurité.
the principles
Elle sape
on which
l'architecture de
peace and security
non-prolifération
are
édifiée
founded.
pierre
It
après pierre depuis des
undermines the
décennies.
architecture of
Et elle remet en
non-proliferation
cause la
built
stabilité
stone by
stratégique.
stone over the course of decades.
Nous avons
And it
alerté
calls
à de
into
multiples
question
reprises
strategic
devant ce
stability.
Conseil
We've pointed
le
out several
risque de
times before
réémergence
this
de ces
Council
armes,
that there is
de
a
leur
risk of the
prolifération vers
re-emergence of
tous les
these
types
weapons and their
d'acteurs,
proliferation
et de la
towards all
menace que
kinds
cette
of
situation
actors,
faisait peser
and the threat
sur
that
le
this
système de
situation
sécurité
would pose for the
collective que
collective
nous avons
security
progressivement
system
bâti
which we
ensemble.
have gradually built together.
Soyons bien conscients
Let us be very
que nous
aware
atteignons ici une dimension
that
nouvelle,
here we have reached
celle de
a new
l'utilisation
stage,
d'une substance
namely
jamais
the
déclarée
use of a
à
substance that was
l'Organisation pour
never
l'interdiction des
declared
armes
to the
chimiques,
Organization for the
dont l'emploi
Prohibition
est
of Chemical
interdit par la
Weapons,
Convention
the use of which
dans un
is
lieu public
prohibited by the
sur le
Convention,
territoire
and
d'un
we've seen
pays
it used in
européen.
a public area on the territory
Monsieur le Président,
of a
la
European
France
country.
n'acceptera jamais
Mr. President,
de
France
laisser
will
ceux
never
qui utilisent ou
accept
développent des agents
impunity
toxiques
for
dans
those who
l'impunité.
use or develop
Nous rappelons dans ce
toxic
contexte notre
agents.
plein soutien aux
We recall
institutions
here our full
existantes, en
support for
particulier
existing
l'OISC.
institutions, particularly the
C'est également la raison pour
OPCW.
laquelle la
This
France
is
a
also
lancé
the
en
reason
janvier
why
dernier
France, last
un
January,
partenariat
launched
international
an
destiné
international
à appuyer
partnership
les instruments
aimed at
existants
supporting
dans la
existing
lutte contre
instruments
l'impunité
to
dans
fight
l'usage de
impunity
ces armes.
in the use of these weapons.
Monsieur le Président, nous devons
Mr.
rester
President,
plus que jamais
we, more than
mobilisés
ever before,
dans la
must
lutte
remain
contre la
mobilized
prolifération
in
des
our
armes de
fight
destruction
against
massive
proliferation
et contre
of weapons
l'impunité
of
de
mass
ceux
destruction
qui
and
envisagent
against the
d'y recourir.
impunity of those who plan to use
C'est
them.
pour nous tous une priorité de tout premier
It is
plan,
a
une responsabilité majeure
priority for all
et
of
l'une de
us,
celles
a major
qui appartient
responsibility,
au Conseil de
and one
sécurité.
of those that belongs
sur
to
laquelle nous
the
serons
Security Council, and according
Soyez à
to
cet
which
égard
we
assurés de
shall be
l'engagement
judged.
résolu de la France en ce sens,
You
aux
can be
côtés de ses
assured of
partenaires
France's
et alliés,
resolute commitment
au sein de ce
alongside
Conseil
our partners
et
and
dans toutes les
allies
circonstances
within this
qui
Council
l'exigent.
and in all
Je vous remercie.
circumstances which require this response. Thank you.
I thank the representative of France for his statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of Kuwait.
شكرا سيد الرئيس. سيد الرئيس، يعقد المجلس اليوم جلسة لبحث مسألة ذات علاقة باستخدام الأسلحة الكيميائية. وبغض النظر عن عنوان البند، سواء الرسالة الموجهة من القائم بالأعمال وفد المملكة المتحدة أو انتشار أسلحة الدمار الشامل، نعتقد بأن هذه المسألة مقلقة ومحاولة الاغتيال وهذه الجريمة تمثل خطورة مثل هذه الحوادث وتأثيرها على أمن وسلامة المدنيين وانعكاساتها في بعض الأحيان على استقرار العلاقات بين الدول الأعضاء. موقف الكويت المبدئي والثابت هو إدانة أي استخدام أو إنتاج أسلحة كيميائية أو حيازتها وتخزينها أو الاحتفاظ بها أو نقل الأسلحة الكيميائية بصورة مباشرة أو غير
stockpiling, preservation, or transport
directly
or indirectly.
على ما نصت عليه المادة الأولى من اتفاقية حظر الأسلحة الكيميائية التي ندعو جميع الدول المصدقة على هذه الاتفاقية إلى الالتزام بأحكامها والتخلص من مخزونها من المادة الكيميائية السامة. لقد دعت المملكة المتحدة لعقد هذا الاجتماع لأنها تعتبر ما حدث على أراضيها أمرا عدائيا.
For and convened this meeting because of the hostile act committed on the territory of that country. And this is also a violation of international conventions, and in particular the one on chemical weapons, which is why we support the right of the United Kingdom to carry out all the necessary investigations on this kind of attack and to undertake all the necessary measures in this regard. And lastly, we call upon all of the states who have special responsibility in maintaining international peace and security, and all other states as well, to continue acting in line with the United Nations Charter and undertake very clear and sincere steps in order to build a world free of chemical weapons and free of weapons of mass destruction. And we recall here Resolution 2325 adopted in 2016. The resolution underscored the need to put an end to the proliferation of all kinds of weapons, chemical, biological, or nuclear, who are a danger for international peace and security. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Kuwait for his statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of Equatorial Guinea.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Señor presidente, la República de Guinea Ecuatorial
The Republic of
ha
Equatorial
tenido conocimiento
Guinea
del incidente
learnt of the
del ataque
incident
utilizando
of the
un agente
attack
químico en
using
Salisbury,
a
Reino Unido,
chemical nerve agent in Salisbury,
y
United
espera que
Kingdom.
hechos como estos serán
And
debidamente
we hope
investigados
that
y
events
las
such as these will be
conclusiones
duly
hechas
investigated,
públicas,
and the
los
results of those
responsables
investigations are
deberán
made public, and those responsible
afrontar la acción de la justicia.
will face justice.
En cuanto a las acusaciones
With regard
sobre
to
la
the
implicación de la
accusations
Federación
with
Rusa
regard to
en
the
el
involvement of
incidente
the Russian
vertidas
Federation
por el
in
gobierno
the
británico,
event, the
Guinea
accusation
Ecuatorial
made by the
espera que
United
ambas
Kingdom,
partes, es decir, el
the
gobierno
Equatorial Guinea
británico
hopes
y
that
de la
both parties,
Federación
the
Rusa,
UK and the Russian Federation,
podrán resolver y
will be
manejar
able
la
to
situación de la forma más
resolve the
adecuada
situation
mediante contactos
in the most
directos
appropriate way possible
tras
through
un total
direct contact
esclarecimiento de
and
los
by fully
hechos.
clarifying the facts.
Es por ello que recomendamos que mientras
That's why we recommend
recomendamos que mientras se lleva a cabo estas
that whilst this
investigaciones,
investigation
ambas partes,
is
la
being
Federación
carried out,
Rusa y
both
el Reino
parties, the
Unido,
Russian
hagan
Federation
prueba
and
de
the
moderación
United Kingdom,
e invitamos a ambas
show
partes
moderation,
a colaborar
and we
estrechamente
invite
en
both
las
parties to
investigaciones que se
cooperate
están
closely in
realizando
the investigations being
para
carried out
esclarecer esta
in
situación.
order to
Apreciamos la
shed light on
iniciativa
the
del Reino
situation.
Unido
We appreciate the
para
initiative
invitar
of
a
the United Kingdom
investigadores
to
independientes
invite
y
independent
facultativos para llevar a cabo
experts
los análisis
to carry
necesarios
out the necessary
para obtener unas
analyses
conclusiones o resultados
in order
que
to
puedan
produce
dilucidar
results
esta
that will
entramada
be able
situación.
to explain
Señor presidente,
this very difficult situation.
Concluyo mi breve
I
intervención
conclude my brief comments, Mr.
dejando claro
President,
que
making clear
la República de Guinea
that the
Ecuatorial
Republic of Equatorial
es
Guinea
totalmente contraria
is
a la
completely
producción,
against the
al almacenaje,
production and
distribución
storage and
y a la
distribution
utilización de cualquier
and
agente
use
químico,
of any chemical,
biológico,
biological,
bacteriológico y
bacteriological,
productos similares
or other
contra seres
similar
humanos,
products against
ya que contraviene a
human
los
beings,
contra los
because
tratados
this is contrary
internacionales
to
pertinentes sobre el
international
particular.
law
Por
in
lo
this
tanto,
regard.
condenamos tal
Therefore,
utilización,
we fully
sea quien sea
condemn
el
this
utilizador.
kind of use, whoever
Deseamos
uses these
una pronta
weapons.
recuperación
And
tanto al señor
we hope
Sergei
that,
Skripal como a su
Mr.
hija
Skripal
y
and
demás
his daughter
personas
and the others
que hayan
affected
podido
will
verse
recover
afectadas
as soon as
por este
possible, those that
incidente.
have been
Muchas
affected
gracias.
by this incident. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Equatorial Guinea for his statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Poland.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to thank the representative of the United Kingdom for his initiative. Poland is gravely concerned by information of the use of nerve agent in an attempt to murder Mr. Sergei Skripal and his daughter, Mrs. Julia Skripal, which endanger lives of innocent civilians. Poland has been always a committed supporter of curbing chemical weapons. In this context, we condemn this unprecedented attack on the territory of the United Kingdom, the first of this kind in Europe after the Second World War. After continued use of chemicals as weapons in Syria, this case is another clear example of violation of the international law and the provisions of the Convention of the Prohibition of the Development, Production, stockpiling and use of chemical weapons and on their destruction. We express our full solidarity with the British people and the British government, as well as our readiness to support our close ally and European partner in conduct of the investigation. At the same time, we call on Russia to address the UK's questions and appropriately cooperate with the OPCW in this regard. Poland expresses its strong conviction that there is no place for impunity. Those responsible for the use of chemical weapons must and should be held accountable. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of Poland for her statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Peru.
Señor Presidente, agradecemos
Mr.
la
President,
convocatoria a esta reunión
we thank you for
y la
convening
información
this meeting,
compartida por el
and
representante del
would like
Reino
to
Unido.
thank the United Kingdom for the
En
information
línea
they've
con el
shared with us.
capítulo 6 de la Carta,
In accordance with Chapter
estimamos
6 of the
importante
Charter, we
mantener
believe it's
informado a
important
este
to
Consejo de Seguridad
ensure the
sobre
Council is
situaciones que
informed
pueden
with
derivar en
regard
una
to
controversia
situations which could
internacional.
become an
Perú
international
considera
dispute.
que el empleo de armas
Peru believes
químicas
that the use of
constituye
chemical
per se
weapons
una
per
amenaza a la
se
paz y
is a
seguridad
threat to
internacional
international peace and
y
security
una violación del respectivo
and a
régimen de no
violation for
proliferación
the
que pone en
non-proliferation
riesgo
regime
la vida de civiles.
and which puts at
En
risk the
consecuencia,
lives
queremos
of
expresar
civilians.
nuestra
This is
grave
why we would like to
preocupación
express
por el
our
empleo de un
grave
agente
concern
nervioso
at the use
en
of a
espacio
nerve
público
agent in a public
que ha puesto en
space,
serio riesgo la
which
vida
has
de al menos
seriously
3
endangered
personas en el Reino
the
Unido.
lives of at least 3 people
Debemos
in the United
lamentar
Kingdom.
que ello haya
What
ocurrido
has
y expresamos
occurred
nuestra
is
solidaridad con las
lamentable,
víctimas.
and we express our
El
solidarity with the
incidente
victims.
debe ser
The
investigado
incident
en
must
el
be
marco del
investigated
Estado de Derecho
in the
y del
framework
debido
of the rule of
proceso
law and due
a través de la
process
Organización
through the
para la Prohibición de las
Organization
Armas
for the
Químicas
Prohibition
y otras
of
instancias
Chemical
competentes.
Weapons and other competent bodies.
Las partes concernidas
The
deberán
parties
cooperar
involved
plenamente
must
con una
fully cooperate
investigación
in
creíble
a credible
que permita
investigation
determinar las
which will determine
responsabilidades
who
y
is responsible
sanciones que
and
resulten
what
del caso
sanctions are
de
to be
conformidad
applied
con el
in
derecho
the case
internacional
in
aplicable.
accordance with applicable international
Hacemos
law.
finalmente un llamado
Finally,
a
we
mantener
would
abiertos los canales de diálogo para
urge
resolver
channels of
esta
communication to
situación. Muchas
remain
gracias.
open to resolve this situation. Thank you very much.
I thank the representative of Peru for his statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of Sweden.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and thank you very much to the delegation of the United Kingdom for updating the Security Council on the use of nerve agents in Salisbury on the 4th of March. Sweden condemns in the strongest terms the attempted murder on UK soil using a nerve agent. We stress the seriousness of this incident, unprecedented in Europe in recent years. Those responsible for the attack must be identified and held to account for their heinous actions. Given that a nerve agent developed as a chemical weapon has been used, and the possibility that the attempted murder have links to state actors, Sweden supports the decision by the United Kingdom to bring this issue to the attention of the Security Council and other relevant bodies, such as the OPCW. We stand by the United Kingdom, and we, like other EU partners, express our strong solidarity with the UK government and support its efforts in dealing with this grave security issue. Mr. President, we note that the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, in her letter to the Secretary General, states that the class of chemical warfare agents used was originally developed by the Soviet Union and then inherited by the Russian Federation. Given this, and taking into account the principal victim's background, we support the UK's request that Russia provide an account of how the agent could have come to be deployed in Salisbury. Let me also take this opportunity to stress the importance Sweden attaches to the ban on chemical weapons. These cruel and illegal weapons kill indiscriminately and have no place in the world. We need to ensure that the integrity of the Chemical Weapons Conventions is fully respected. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of Sweden for his statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Côte d'Ivoire.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Monsieur le Président,
Mr. President,
la Côte d'Ivoire a appris
d'Ivoire
avec une vive
learned
émotion
with great
l'utilisation
distress
d'agents
of the
chimiques
use of
neurotoxiques
neurotoxic
sur le sol
chemical
britannique
agent on the
le
British
4 mars
soil on the 4th of
2018
March
à
2018
Salisbury.
in Salisbury.
Elle exprime
We
sa sincère solidarité
express
aux autorités
sincere
britanniques
solidarity
et
to
souhaite
the
un prompt
authorities
rétablissement
of the United
aux personnes
Kingdom
contaminées.
and wish full and speedy recovery
La
to
Côte d'Ivoire
the
a toujours condamné
contaminated.
et
We
condamne
have
tout
always
usage
condemned
d'armes
and continue
chimiques,
condemning
quelle qu'en
any
soit la
use
forme.
of chemical weapons, whatever the form.
Aussi, demande-t-elle
We
que
therefore
toute la lumière soit
request that
faite
all possible
sur
light
l'acte survenu
be
à Salisbury.
shed on the
Merci.
event which took place in Salisbury. Thank you.
I thank the representative of Côte d'Ivoire for his statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Kazakhstan.
Mr. President, Kazakhstan is known for its clear and consistent position of an uncompromising opponent of all types of weapons of mass destruction, including chemical weapons. We condemn any use of weapons of mass destruction as immoral, inhuman, and contrary to the principles of humanity. We express our deep concern over the tragic incident with the possible use of chemical warfare agent on the territory of the United Kingdom. It is impermissible to use the chemical agents against anyone and anywhere. At the same time, since it is a very politically sensitive issue, we should be extremely cautious and careful in drawing hastily conclusions without credible and convincing facts on the ground. The incident should be carefully investigated and any conclusions should be substantiated. We believe that any international response to this incident should be considered only after the exhaustive, transparent, objective, and impartial investigation in accordance with the existing norms of international law, primarily on the basis of the provisions of the Convention on the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons. We hope that two parties will be able to resolve all the contradictions and disputes between them by diplomatic means and normalize British-Russian relations for the benefit of global stability and security. I thank you.
I thank the representative of Kazakhstan for his statement. I now give the floor to the representative of Bolivia.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Tomamos nota de lo expuesto el día de hoy
take note
sobre los acontecimientos
of the information provided today
que
with
tuvieron
regard to
lugar el
the
día 4 de
events
marzo
that
pasado.
took place on the 4th of March.
Bolivia expresa una vez más su
Bolivia
más
once
firme y
again
categórica
expresses
condena
our
al
firm
uso
and
de elementos
categoric
químicos como armas
condemnation of the use of chemical
por ser un
weapons.
hecho injustificable y
This
criminal,
is
donde quiera,
unjustifiable
cuando
and
sea
criminal
y por quien
by
sea que sea
whoever
cometido, puesto
commits
que
these
su uso
crimes
es
and
un
wherever
delito
they
grave
commit
contra el
them.
derecho internacional,
This
la
is a
paz y la
serious
seguridad internacional.
threat to international peace
En
and
ese sentido,
security,
esperamos que se realice una
and we
investigación de la
hope
manera
that
más
an
metódica,
investigation will be
técnica,
carried out
completa,
in a
concluyente y
methodological, complete,
despolitizada a
comprehensive way
través de las instancias
through the
correspondientes.
competent
Muchas
bodies.
gracias, señor
Thank you very
presidente.
much.
I thank the representative of Bolivia for his statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of Ethiopia.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have been following the news about the nerve agent attack in Salisbury, UK. We express our sympathy for and solidarity with the families of the victims, as well as with the people and government of the United Kingdom. We have noted the letter by the Prime Minister of the UK addressed to the Secretary General on the incident circulated yesterday, and we appreciate the UK delegation for the briefing that we have received a while ago. Our position on the use of chemical weapons is well known, and we strongly condemn any use of chemical weapons by any state or non-state actor. Use of chemicals as weapons is unacceptable, and it constitutes a serious violation under international law. This said, we hope the necessary independent investigation will be conducted and also vetted on the Salisbury incident, including by undertaking consultation and exchange of information on the basis of the relevant provisions of the Chemical Weapons Convention, with a view to bringing those responsible to justice. We believe cooperation between Russia and the UK in good faith is very critical to ensure that this issue will not get out of hand and undermine even further relations between the two countries. In this regard, we are hopeful and trust that given the very justified concern of the UK, all concerned will provide full cooperation so that the matter will be addressed in a fair manner, also in a way that would help allay the concerns of the United Kingdom. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of Ethiopia for his statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of China.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President,
中方注意到
China has
近
noted
日在英国发生的
the
中
recent
毒事件，
poisoning incident in the UK.
我们注意到
We
相关国
take
家
note of
就上述
the
事件
statements
所
made
做
by
的表态
relevant。countries on this incident.
我们希望
We hope
以事实
that
为依据，
a comprehensive,
根据有关国际规则，
objective,
对上述事件进行
and
全面、
impartial
客观、
investigation
公
could
正
be
调查，
conducted based on facts in accordance with relevant international
基于
rules,
确凿证据
and reach an
得
evidence-based
出经得
conclusion
起
that can
事
stand
实
the test of facts
和历史
and
检验的结论
history.。
希望
We hope
相关各方
relevant parties
通过适当渠
could
道
properly handle
妥善
this
处理
issue through
这一问题。
appropriate channels.
谢谢主席先
Thank
生
you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of China for his statement, and I now give the floor to the representative of the Russian Federation.
Благодарю вас, господин
Thank you,
председатель.
Mr. President.
Господин
Mr.
председатель,
President,
вчера после
yesterday,
распространения в Совете Безопасности
the Security
письма
Council has
британского
circulated
премьер-министра,
a letter from the British Prime
Соединенное
Minister.
Королевство
After that, the
запросило
United Kingdom
проведение закрытой
requested
консультации.
that closed consultations be held.
Мы же попросили председателя Совета
asked the
Безопасности
President
изменить
of
формат
the
проведения
Security Council to change the
с
format of the
закрытой
meeting and
консультации
change
на
it from
открытый
closed
брифинг.
consultations to an open briefing.
И сделали мы это не
And
просто
we
так,
did this not without thinking.
потому что мы
We did
хотели,
this
чтобы
because
все
we
видели,
wanted
что
to make
здесь
sure
происходит.
that everyone should see what is happening here.
Потому что в этом письме,
Because the
в котором
letter,
содержатся
which
абсолютно
contains
безответственные заявления,
completely irresponsible statements,
и которые мне даже трудно
and
комментировать в
which it is even
дипломатических
difficult for
выражениях,
me to comment while using diplomatic
содержится угроза
vocabulary.
суверенному
It
государству,
contains threats
постоянному
to
члену
a
Совета
sovereign
Безопасности,
state towards a permanent member of Security Council,
и идут вразрез с международным
which
правом
is at
и статьей
variance with international
2.4
law and the chapters
Устава ООН.
2.4 of the UN Charter.
Мне хотелось бы понять, наши
I would like
британские
to
коллеги
understand the
хотя бы это
following.
понимают?
Do our British colleagues understand this?
Первый вопрос,
And the
который мы
first
хотим задать.
question that we want to put is this.
Почему представители
Why
Соединенного
is it that the
Королевства
representatives of
тащат
the
этот
United
вопрос в
Kingdom are
СБ,
dragging this issue into the Security Council?
при этом игнорируя
And at the
установленные
same time,
процедуры,
they
которыми
ignore
Лондон
the
в соответствии со
procedures
своими
which
международными
London, in
обязательствами
line with
обязан
their own
следовать,
international commitments, has to abide by,
а именно задействовав
namely,
профильные организации.
involving the specialized organizations.
Если речь идет об использовании на территории
We're
королевства
talking
токсичного
about
химвещества,
the use of a toxic chemical on British soil.
нам, собственно, очевиден ответ на этот вопрос. Наши
that the answer to
партнеры
this is
тянут
as
этот вопрос на
obvious. The
площадку
reason this is
СБ,
being dragged into the Security
потому что
Council,
понимают,
because they do
что настоящих
understand
экспертов в области
the
химоружия
real
в Гааге
experts, the genuine experts on
их
chemical
доводы
weapons
не
are
убедят.
in the Hague, and those experts will
То
not
есть, в
be
действительности,
convinced
они боятся
by their
настоящего
arguments. In
профессионального
other words,
разговора на
they are
эту тему.
afraid of having a real,
Все это
genuine
говорит только
professional
о том,
discussion of
что
this topic. This
инициаторами
shows
руководят совершенно иные
that
мотивы.
the initiators of this meeting are being guided by something completely different.
Российская Федерация
The
считает
Russian
абсолютно неприемлемым
Federation thinks that it's completely unacceptable
голословные обвинения, изложенные в обращении премьер-министра
launch
Великобритании Терезы Мэй
unjustified
от 13
accusations
марта на
as
имя генерального
contained in the
секретаря ООН
letter from Theresa May dated 13th of March to the Secretary
о
General
якобы
of the UN.
причастности нашей страны к применению
It
Солсбери
states
отравляющих
that
веществ.
we had something to do with the use of toxic agents in
От нас
Salisbury.
в ультимативной форме
And we were
потребовали
given an
24-часовой
ultimatum
срок,
and
по сути,
requested in
признаться в совершении
24
преступления
hours to admit that we committed a crime.
осуществить явку с
In other
повинной.
words, confess.
Мы сами
We
языком ультиматумов
do not
ни с кем не
speak the
разговариваем.
language of ultimatums. We do not
И
use
с
that
собой
language with
разговаривать в
anyone.
таком тоне не
And
позволим.
we will not allow to be spoken to in that language
Но мы
either.
люди вежливые.
But we are polite.
И 13 марта
And on the
направили в
13th of
Foreign
March,
Office
we
ноту,
did send a note to the
которые
Foreign Office,
подтвердили
where
непричастность
we
России к этому
reaffirmed that we had
инциденту
nothing to do with this
и
incident,
запросили образцы
and
примененного
asked for
вещества
the
и
samples
совместное
of the
расследование.
substance being used, and also
Тем
asked
более,
for
что
joint
одна из
investigation.
пострадавших
All
гражданка
the more
Российской
so,
Федерации.
since one of the people
В этом нам
who
было
impacted
отказано.
was a Russian national. This request was refused.
То есть, нагнетая истерику,
In other
Лондон
words, a
действует
hysterical
абсолютно
atmosphere is
нетранспарентно.
being created by London and also being completely non-transparent in
Сегодня
this.
появились сообщения о высылке российских
We saw
дипломатов
today
и замораживании
the
двусторонних
announcement
отношений.
that Russian diplomats are being
Я,
expelled
кстати, хочу
and
спросить свою британскую коллегу, это на ООН тоже распространяется?
bilateral relations are being frozen. I want to ask my UK colleague whether this applies to the UN as well.
Появились сообщения о
We
готовящейся
also
кибератаке
saw
на Россию.
announcements about a prepared cyber attack against Russia.
Предупреждаем, все это
We
без
would
ответа
like
не
to
останется.
warn that this will not remain
Мы
without reaction
вынуждены
on our
сделать
part.
вывод, что
We
власти
are
Великобритании
compelled to make the
установление
following
истины интересует в
conclusion,
последнюю
that
очередь.
the authorities of the
А
UK
движут ими совершенно
are
иные мотивы.
interested in finding the truth
В ход идут отточенные за
last.
последние годы
They're
приемы
guided by something
пропагандистской
else.
войны,
They're using the
рассчитанные
propaganda
на
war
оказание мощного информационного
ways
воздействия
of
на непросвещенное
recent years, and they are trying to thus influence the public, which is very easy to influence and not well educated.
Но за этим нет никаких фактов, кроме голословных утверждений о российском
следе. Other than the unsubstantiated claim that there is a
Кстати,
Russian
это далеко
trace
не
in all of
первый
this.
случай,
This is
совершенных
not
при
the
весьма
first
туманных обстоятельствах покушений на жизнь российских граждан или выходцев из России в
nationals in the UK or people from Russia in the UK
которые до сих пор не
have their life
расследованы
endangered,
или в
where such
ознакомлении с которыми нам было
instances are
отказано.
not investigated or where we're not allowed to become acquainted with
Лондону
such
для начала
investigations.
следовало бы разобраться с
London
тем, что
should
происходит на его
first
территории.
try and determine what it is that's happening on
Прежде чем
their
обвинять
territory
других, воспитанные
before
люди обычно наводят порядок у себя дома.
going ahead and accusing others, because that's what polite people do.
Мы предложили британской стороне немедленно задействовать процедуры, предусмотренные пунктом 2 статьи 9 Конвенции о запрещении химического оружия. Она предусматривает обращение за разъяснениями и предоставление запрашивающему государству участнику ответа как можно быстрее, но в любом случае не позднее, чем через 10 дней после получения запроса. Британские коллеги знают об этом, но не спешат воспользоваться положениями Конвенции, членами которой они являются. Мы требуем предъявления материальных доказательств якобы обнаруженного российского следа в данном резонансном деле. Без этого заявление о наличии неопровержимых данных в расчет приниматься не будет. Пока ничего, кроме highly likely, мы не видели.
Until now, we have not seen anything besides stating that this is highly likely.
В этой ситуации правомерно обратиться за помощью к техническому секретариату ОСХО в проведении независимого лабораторного анализа, имеющихся в распоряжении британских властей образцов. Теперь несколько слов о химии. В Российской Федерации никакие научные исследовательские и опытные конструкторские разработки под условным названием «Новичок» не проводились. С начала 70-х годов в целом ряде стран реализовывались программы по созданию новых типов отравляющих веществ нервно-паралитического действия, в частности в США и Советском Союзе, под названием VX.
And this was called VX.
В соответствии с указом
In line
президента
with the
Российской
decree by the President of the Russian Federation in 1992,
советские
the
разработки в области
Soviet
химического
developmental
оружия в
work in
России
the area
были
of chemical weapons
прекращены.
in Russia were stopped.
В 2017
In
году
2017,
Российская
the
Федерация
Russian
завершила
Federation
уничтожение
completed the
всех имевшихся
destruction
запасов
of all
химического
existing
оружия,
stocks of
что
chemical weapons,
подтверждено
and
уполномоченной
this has been
международной структурой Организацией
verified
по
by
запрещению
the relevant
химического
international
оружия.
entity, namely the Organization on the Prohibition of Chemical
Кстати,
Weapons.
Соединенные
By the
Штаты
way,
до
the
сих пор свой
United
химический
States
арсенал не
has
уничтожил.
not, to date, destroyed their chemical stockpile.
В середине 90-х годов
In the
западные
middle of
спецслужбы
1990s,
вывезли
the
на
Western
Запад
special
ряд наших
services
специалистов, их имена известны,
moved to the West a number of our specialists, and their names are
а также
well
некоторую
known.
документацию.
And also some documentation
продолжили
was taken
исследования
out
в
of our
данном
country,
направлении,
and
в том
continued
числе в
their
Великобритании и
work
Соединенных
in this area, including in the US and the UK.
Достигнутые этими странами положительные результаты
The
по
positive
созданию новых
results
отравляющих
that they've
веществ,
obtained on
которые на
creating
Западе
new
по каким-то
chemical agents,
соображениям
which
классифицируют под
for
общим
some
названием «новичок»,
reason in the West are classified
подтверждены и
as
отражены более
Novichok,
чем в 200
has been
открытых
confirmed and
источниках стран
reflected
НАТО.
in more than 200 open sources
Эти ссылки у нас
of
есть.
NATO countries, and we do have
Готовы
the reference
предоставить.
to that, and we stand ready to provide you with them.
Собственно, идентификация отравляющего вещества, якобы примененного в инциденте, производилась в научно-техническом центре Министерства обороны Великобритании, в населенном пункте Портендаун, на базе которого и велась разработка, а также производство химического оружия, в том числе данного типа. Наиболее вероятным источником происхождения данного химиката являются страны, которые с конца 90-х годов по настоящее время и проводятся интенсивные исследования по указанным веществам, в том числе Великобритании.
Intensive research on these kinds of weapons, including the UK. But we're not chemists here.
Я вам приведу мнение одного
Let me
профессионального
just
химика.
quote the opinion of a professional chemist.
чтобы британские специалисты
For the
с
British
полной
specialists
уверенностью могли установить,
to be
что
perfectly
этот газ именно
confident
новичок,
in stating that this
а
gas
не
is a
какой-либо иной.
novichok kind of gas and not any other kind.
Им обязательно нужно
They
иметь так называемый
need
контрольный
to
стандарт,
have the what we call control standard.
Чтобы доказать, что это то
In order
самое
to
соединение,
prove that that
его нужно
is
сравнить с
that exact
соответствующим
compound,
стандартом.
it needs to be compared to a standard.
Если они говорят, что это
If
газ
they
новичок,
state that this gas
то
is
у
a
них
novichok kind
априори
of
есть
gas,
стандарт
well,
этого
that a
вещества.
priori means that they have a
Значит, есть
standard for
коллекция и
this
формула.
substance. In other words, they have a collection and they have the formula.
Это самый важный момент во
And
всей
this
этой
is
истории.
the most important point in this whole
Иначе говоря,
story.
если
In
Британия
other words,
так твердо
if
уверена,
the
что это
UK
газ
is
новичок,
so firmly convinced this is
то она имеет
this
его
is the
химическую
Novichok
формулу,
gas,
его
then that
образцы
means that they
и
have the
сама
samples
способна
of
его
this and
производить.
they have the formula for this and they're capable of manufacturing that.
Господин председатель,
Mr. President,
мы живем в особое время.
we are living in a very, very special
На наших
times.
глазах происходят
In
удивительные
front of our
события.
eyes, incredible things are happening.
Идет процесс подмены презумпции невиновности
Of replacing
на
the
презумпцию
presumption
вины.
of innocence with the presumption of guilt is taking place.
Причем этот принцип уголовного права
This
переносится на
criminal law
международные
principle
отношения.
is now being transferred into international relations.
Вот сегодня посол Хилли,
Today, Ambassador
как опытный
Haley,
химик,
as
эксперт
an
в
experienced
области химии,
chemist and an expert in
заявляла
that
сегодня о
area,
преступлениях
stated,
России.
talked today about the crimes committed by Russia.
Мы знаем уже давно, что вам,
We have
чтобы
known for a
установить
very long
виновных, не
time
нужны
that for
никакие
you,
расследования.
in order to determine who is a guilty party, no investigation is needed.
В письме
In
премьер-министра
the letter by the
Великобритании
Prime Minister of the UK,
говорится о том, что это highly
it
likely.
is stated that this is highly likely.
Но даже в этом вы
But
превзошли своего верного союзника.
But even in this, you have exceeded your reliable
Если для
ally.
советского прокурора Вышинского признание
The
было царицей
Soviet
доказательств,
prosecutor Vyshinsky thought that confession was the best kind of proof.
то теперь, по меткому
Well,
выражению министра
now,
Лаврова,
using the expression
подозрение
of
становится царицей
Minister
доказательств.
Lavrov, what is the best kind of proof is suspicion.
Уже не требуется демонстрировать в Совете
It
пробирки с
is
неизвестным
no
белым веществом.
longer necessary to show to the Council test tubes with unknown white substance in
Достаточно
it.
писать
It
письмо,
is enough
содержащее
to send
вопиющие
a
отношения в
letter
отношении суверенной
which
страны.
contains an egregious attitude towards a sovereign state.
Это же мы наблюдаем по
And we
Сирии.
are witnessing the same when it comes to Syria.
Теперь число нарушителей конвенции пытаются записать Россию.
Now Russia is being pushed towards the number of those who are violating the
Хочу напомнить о
convention.
послужном
Let me
списке
simply
участия Великобритании в
remind you
незаконных вооруженных нападениях на
about
независимые
the
государства,
UK
в том числе с использованием
involvement
ложных доказательств.
in illegal attacks on independent states, including using unsubstantiated proof.
Югославия, Ирак,
Yugoslavia,
Ливия.
Iraq, Libya.
Это привело к неисчислимым
This
страданиям мирного
led to
населения.
numerous suffering amongst
Вы не забыли о
civilians.
том, что Великобритания известна
Don't
как
forget
государство,
that the
прибегающее
UK
к
is well known
практике
as
целевых
a
убийств с
state
использованием дронов.
which uses targeted assassinations by
И слышать
drones.
от вас в этом
And
контексте
listening,
инвективы в наш
hearing
адрес
from you invectives
странно.
against us is something that is odd.
а бездоказательные в
And when
особенности.
there is no proof behind them, it's all the more odd.
В юриспруденции, да и в жизни
In
вообще есть
jurisprudence and in life,
принцип
in general, there is a principle.
cui bono
The
или
principle
cui prodest.
qui bono or
То
qui
есть ищите
prodest.
тех, кому
In
это
other words,
выгодно.
look for those for whose benefit this is being done.
Как вы думаете,
Well, what do you think?
выгоден этот инцидент России
This
накануне
incident
президентских
is-
выборов и
this-
чемпионата мира по футболу?
Is this something that benefits Russia on the eve of presidential elections and the World Football Championship?
Зато я знаю сразу несколько стран.
But I can name a number of countries
Но я в соответствии с принципом презумпции
who are,
невиновности не
but
буду называть их по имени.
abiding by the principle of the presumption
Для
of
которых
innocence,
этот
I will not
инцидент
name them.
И обвинения
But I
в нем в России
can
чрезвычайно
think of a
выгодны и
number of
своевременны.
countries who would benefit a great deal from this incident and accusing Russia of it.
Как вы думаете, какой
What
мотив,
do you
на
think?
который
What
ссылается
could be the
премьер-министр Великобритании
motivation
у
that
России
the Prime Minister
для
of UK is
устранения
using,
Сергея
that Russia
Скрипаля,
could have for the attempt on Sergei Skripal?
который после расследования
Who,
дела,
after
осуждения,
the
отбытия срока,
investigation, after
помилования и выдачи британским
he
властям
served his
не
sentence,
представлял никакой
then
угрозы для нашей
pardoned
страны.
and given over to the British was no longer of any kind of threat to my country.
Зато он прекрасно подходит на роль
But
жертвы,
he is a perfect victim
которой можно оправдать любую
which could
немыслимую
justify
ложь,
any unthinkable
черный
lie,
пиар в
any
отношении
kind
России.
of dirt or any kind of black PR tarnishing Russia.
Мы неоднократно предупреждали,
We
что
have
что-нибудь в
stated
этом
many
роде,
a time
какая-то
that
провокация
anything along
накануне
those
известных
lines,
событий
any
может
kind of a
случиться.
provocation before a certain events could happen.
Сегодня мы свидетели
And
того,
today
что
we're
власти Соединенного
witnessing
Королевства
the
ведут
fact
курс
that the
на
authorities
сознательное
of the
очернительство
UK
России, не
are
гнушаясь никакими
consciously
методами.
trying to tarnish Russia, stooping to any low.
У английского классика Артура Конан
Arthur
Дойля,
Conan Doyle, the British classic,
прославившего свою страну и очень популярного в России,
for fame for his country and very popular in Russia,
в его рассказах
has
о
a
Шерлоке
series of
Холмсе есть
stories
один
about
незадачливый и комичный
Sherlock Holmes,
персонаж.
and he has a hapless character in those stories.
Инспектор Лестрейд из
Inspector
Скотланд-Ярда.
Lestrade from Scotland Yard.
Он не обладает сугубым интеллектом и не владеет дедуктивным
not,
методом.
he doesn't have the method of deduction, he's not particularly smart.
Его роль оттенять
His role is
необычайные
to be the
детективные способности
background for
Шерлока
the
Холмса.
extraordinary detective powers of Sherlock Holmes.
Он, Лейстрейд, немедленно хватается за
Lestrade
поверхностные следы
latches
преступлений
on something that is
и
on the
спешит с
surface
банальными
of a
выводами,
crime
с тем,
and is in
чтобы
a
быть
hurry to provide
опровергнутым
banal
Шерлоком, который всегда
conclusions,
находит
only
подоплеку
to be
преступления и истинный
overturned by
след и мотив.
Sherlock Holmes, who always finds what is behind the crime and what is the motive for it.
Боже упаси меня подозревать современных
Of course, I
сотрудников
am
Скотланд-Ярда в
not
непрофессионализме.
trying to say that those who work in Scotland Yard today are not professional. God guard
Хотя
me from
сегодня
that.
современный
But
Шерлок Холмс не помешал бы.
I do think that we could all stand to benefit from having a Sherlock Holmes with us today.
Но сегодня в роли коллективного инспектора Лестрейда
The collective
выступают
inspector
высокопоставленные члены
Lestrade
британского
today
правительства,
are the high-level members of the
которые
UK
сыпят
government
безответственными,
who
бездоказательными,
are
поверхностными,
coming up
чудовищными
with
обвинениями,
egregious, superficial and unsupported
что имеет
accusations,
далеко идущие последствия.
which have far-reaching consequences.
Россия призывает официальных лиц
Russia calls upon
Великобритании
the officials
отказаться от
of the
имперских практик
UK to give up
XIX
on the
века,
imperial practices
без
which belong in the
ультиматумов,
19th
обвинений
century,
и
give up on
угроз,
ultimatums and threats and
расстаться с
unsupported
неоколониальными
accusations,
замашками
give up
и
with their
вернуться в
colonial
правовое
habits
поле.
and get back to the area which is governed by law.
В ситуациях, подобных
In
изложенных в
such
заявлениях Терезы Мэй,
situations,
принято
similar to what
обращение
we
к
have in the
инструменту правовой
letter
помощи.
by Theresa May, normally what should be done is using instruments of legal assistance.
Подытоживая, хотел бы
Now,
еще
to
раз
sum
заявить
up,
следующее.
let me say once again,
Россия не причастна к
Russia
этому
had
инциденту.
nothing to do with this incident.
Ультиматумы Лондона
The
мы считаем
ultimatum
ничтожными.
from London is something that we consider to be
Ожидаем.
something that we cannot pay attention to. And we expect, we consider null and void.
Ожидаем, что
We expect
Соединенное Королевство
that
будет действовать
the
в строгом
United Kingdom
соответствии
will
с Конвенцией о
act
запрещении
in
химического
strict
оружия,
adherence with the Convention of
другими
Chemical
международными
Weapons
актами,
and
включая
other
Европейскую
international
конвенцию о
instruments,
правовой помощи по уголовным
including the
делам,
European Convention on Legal
а
Assistance
также
on Criminal
предоставит
Matters,
образцы
and
вещества,
will
на
provide
которые
the
ссылается
samples
британское
of
следствие,
substances
для
that the
совместного
UK
расследования,
investigation is
коль ему
referring to
приписано
for
российское
joint
происхождение.
investigation, since you are saying that they are Russian in origin.
Это не факультативное, а
And
обязательное
this is not
требование по
an
Конвенции.
optional, this is a mandatory requirement under the
Мы к
Convention.
такому расследованию готовы.
We stand ready for such an
Нам
investigation.
бояться и скрывать нечего.
We have nothing to fear, we have nothing to hide.
О механизме задействования пункта 2 статьи 9 Конвенции о запрещении химического оружия мы
9.2
уже
of the
говорили.
Convention on Chemical Weapons is
Если
something that we've
полученные
already
разъяснения
mentioned.
будут сочтены
If
недостаточными,
the explanations
можно будет
provided are
обратиться за содействием
insufficient,
к
well,
руководящим
then
органам
we can
ОСО.
turn to the governing body of the OPCW.
Это единственный
This
цивилизованный
is the
вариант
only
урегулирования вопроса.
civilized way of settling the issue.
Раз уж нас абсолютно
Since
безосновательно обвинили в
we are
несоблюдении Конвенции,
being accused of
другого
violating the
пути просто
convention
нет.
without any justification, well, there is no other way
Без
out.
плотного диалога специалистов
And
различного профиля
fruitless
здесь не
dialogue
обойтись.
with specialists from other specialists in this area is something that we cannot avoid.
Мы готовы к
We
открытому и
are ready to an
конструктивному
open
сотрудничеству в
and
рамках
constructive
КЗКО.
cooperation within the framework of
В заключение,
OPCW.
господин
In conclusion,
председатель,
Mr.
мы хотим
President,
распространить
we
проект
would like to disseminate a
заявления
draft
для
statement
прессы,
for the press,
которое подытоживает
which
наше выступление с
sums up
акцентом
my
на то,
statement and
что необходимо
emphasizes the
задействовать
fact
механизмы статьи
that
9
the
Конвенции о
mechanisms
запрещении
in
химического
Chapter
оружия.
9
Рассчитываю,
of
что
the
все члены
Chemical
Совета его
Weapons
поддержат.
Conventions are
Благодарю.
mentioned, and we hope and expect that all members of the Council will support this. Thank you.
I thank the representative of the Russian Federation for his statement. I shall now make a statement in my capacity as representative of the Kingdom of the Netherlands. The Kingdom of the Netherlands supports remarks by the representative of the United Kingdom, who brought to our attention the urgent matter before us today. I would like to underline 3 points. First, solidarity with the United Kingdom. Second, concern over the use of a chemical weapon. And third, the need for accountability. My first point, solidarity. Until the beginning of this month, it was hard to imagine a more peaceful place in the world than Salisbury, a quiet, historic town among the rolling hills of southern England. Then the peace was brutally disturbed. A man and his daughter were poisoned with the use of a nerve agent. The United Kingdom was shocked, the world was shocked, and the Kingdom of the Netherlands was shocked. On behalf of my government, our Minister of Foreign Affairs, Stef Blok, has strongly condemned the attack and has expressed our solidarity with the United Kingdom. People in the Netherlands feel for Julia and Sergei Skripal, and we hope for the recovery of all the victims. We fully understand the outrage of the UK authorities. We also understand why this new incident is particularly painful for the people of the United Kingdom, who still have vivid memories of the brutal murder of Mr. Litvinenko with the use of radioactive polonium in the heart of London. Now the United Kingdom finds itself confronted with a new and different case, of which the full details are yet to be determined. But one thing is beyond doubt already. No state can or should accept attacks taking place on its sovereign territory. The United Kingdom can count on the full solidarity of the Kingdom of the Netherlands. My second point, the use of a chemical weapon. We express our grave concern over the type of weapon that was used in this attack, a military-grade nerve agent, a substance that no regular criminal could easily get his hands on. This is the first time since the end of the Second World War that a nerve agent has been used in Europe. The recklessness of this act is beyond words. This nerve agent was used in a public space with many unsuspecting civilians around. It could have had even more horrible effects than has been the case. And I would also like to reiterate that any use of chemical weapons is abhorrent. The Kingdom of the Netherlands regards this as a threat to international peace and security. Therefore, it should be a matter of concern for this Council. And we commend the United Kingdom for bringing it to our attention. After the recent chemical weapons attacks in Syria, the attack in the UK is another warning to the world that we must step up our vigilance to prevent the use of these weapons of mass destruction. And we underline the important role of the OPCW in The Hague in this regard. This brings me to my third and final point, accountability. There can be no impunity for this crime. My government stated that the Kingdom of the Netherlands fully supports the UK in its quest for the truth, and we call on all other countries to do so as well. The UK authorities had urged the Russian Federation to provide answers to the questions that they have by yesterday. We can understand why, after Russia's failure to do so, Prime Minister May announced bilateral measures earlier today. We see no reason for Russia to continue to refuse the UK's request, nor do we see any legitimate reason why anyone should try to delay, sidetrack, second-guess or discredit the investigation carried out by the UK authorities. The international community cannot shrug its shoulders over this crime as if nothing happened. The United Nations, this Council and all Member States should cooperate with the United Kingdom as it further investigates this gruesome act. The perpetrators should be brought to justice. I will now resume my function as President of the Council. The representative of the United Kingdom has asked for the floor to make a further statement. You have the floor, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. My Russian colleague asked some questions, and I thought I would answer. He asked, why did we come to the United Nations Security Council? Isn't the Security Council where countries come when there's been a threat to international peace and security, when there has been an unlawful attack on them? He asked if we'll work with Russia here. Of course we will work with Russia here. We believe in the United Nations and its Security Council. We believe in the international rules-based system. We want this council to work together to uphold international peace and security and to resolve conflict together. Of course, we will work with Russia to achieve those aims here in this council. I set out in detail how the Convention on Chemical Weapons works, and in particular its Article 9. Council members have heard from me, you've heard from the Russian colleague. I won't go into it in great detail again. I will simply say that under Article 9, we have asked Russia for an explanation. Russia's response was to say they considered our request to be null and void. We have also asked the OPCW to support us with an independent verification of our analysis. The Russian colleague talked about samples, but again, this is a misunderstanding of the Convention. There are no provisions in the Convention which require the UK to share samples collected as part of a criminal investigation. The Chemical Weapons Convention does provide inspected state parties with a right to have duplicate copies of samples taken for the purposes of an inspection. But Russia is not an inspected state party in this case. We're asked why we were so keen to ask for a quick answer. That comes from our past experience. One of the key tactics in the Russian playbook is to delay, distract, to mire in procedural delay. And we know that, of course, from the tragic Litvinenko case in 2006. We waited for months in the hope that Russia would cooperate with our requests to extradite and investigate the known suspects. We waited in vain. We will not make the same mistake again. And finally, my Russian colleague quotes fiction. Let me quote the Russian president when we think about who benefits. In 2010, he said, quote, "Traitors will kick the bucket, believe me. Those other folks betrayed their friends, their brothers in arms. Whatever they got in exchange for it, those 30 pieces of silver they were given, they will choke on them." Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the representative of the United Kingdom for his statement, and the representative of the Russian Federation has asked for the floor to make a further statement.
Спасибо, господин председатель. Я не планирую вдаваться в подробную дискуссию с моим британским коллегой. Я уже все сказал, что хотел сказать во время своего выступления. Я хотел только подчеркнуть одну вещь, что у нас не было надлежащим образом оформленного запроса в соответствии с Конвенцией по запрещению химического оружия, на который мы были готовы и по-прежнему готовы ответить. Нам предъявили 24-часовой ультиматум. Я еще раз подчеркиваю, что мы в таком тоне, в такой форме отвечать на бездоказательные обвинения, которые были выдвинуты до получения каких-либо ответов, не намерены. Но мы готовы сотрудничать с британскими властями.
But we are ready to cooperate with the British government in order to investigate this unfortunate incident. I do not think that anything that I said earlier is in contradiction with this statement of mine right now. Thank you.
I thank the representative of the Russian Federation for his statement. There are no more names inscribed on the list of speakers. The meeting is adjourned.